Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Adjacent Podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, Adjacent is an online journal of emerging media published by the Interactive Telecommunications Program of New York University, or just ITP. Our mission is to share research, analysis, and opinion from and for diverse creators that are exploring the contemporary moment. Today, we're joined by the founder of the award-winning studio Superbright and adjunct professor at ITP, Igal Nassima. Igal is an artist and programmer from Istanbul, Turkey. He is the founder of Superbright, an award-winning technology studio specializing in AR, VR, and physical computing experiences that are as thought-provoking as they are practical. Igal's works have premiered around the world, including the Venice Biennale, MoMA, Tribeca Festival, Sundance, and South by Southwest, winning the first ever jury selection for Future of Experiences. Hey, Igal, how you doing? Hey, Igal,
Very
how you doing?
good. Good. How are you?
Not bad. Thanks for joining us today. I guess before we get started, how did you, maybe this is a long question that ends up being the whole interview, but how did you even get started in AR, VR?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. When I started at ITP, I had an engineering background, but I was a little bit burned out from engineering. So I was like in that transition period where I'm like, okay, I need to explore something new. I've been coding in the industry for a while.
Mhm.
And then I joined ITP and I started an art gallery in Bushwick called 319
Hmm.
Skulls. A lot of people in my generation of ITP students have actually shown works at 319 Skulls, which was focused on early net arts, new media, performance. There's a lot of like tech art intersection stuff was happening there in Bushwick at that time.
Hmm.
So we were putting on a lot of exhibitions in the gallery, focusing on technology. And then after doing that for 4 years, I was like, okay, I need to transition something into more commercial. And I started thinking about the studio. And the early roots
Hmm.
of the studio is doing exhibition design. And as we were doing a lot of exhibition design projects, working with festivals or institutions, AR started becoming something. This is early days of Vuforia, no AR kit,
Hmm.
markers, QR codes, like really janky stuff. But like the idea was there. And the first project we did was with actually botanical gardens in Bronx, where we did a project with an exhibition about plants with medicinal properties, and they won an award. And I was like, yeah, there's something really amazing here because it was so exciting for audiences to use it. It was really
Hmm.
engaging. And it was this natural digital layer that people needed for interacting with the physical world, right? It's like really
Hmm.
flexible. And then with VR, we started actually interacting much later, skipping the 360 era, but focusing on when the Vives came out, where you could actually
Hmm.
use your bodies and you can have full 6 step. So both of those technologies being actually very different has similar production capabilities, but they are pretty different technologies. So we were like kind of exploring always nascent technologies that fit on the conversation at that time.
Oftentimes I feel like when I'm hearing about, reading about, or even talking about VR and AR, they're kind of combined into the same, like topic. But they are very different. I don't know, what I want to ask is if you're comparing and contrasting VR, should they be kind of in the same conversation most times? Are they different enough to be their own conversation? What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think it's a marketing thing. A lot of technology being produced for AR, VR overlap with each other. And technology companies are using this to their advantage to promote this concept of XR and
Hmm.
bringing that together. I think they're fundamentally very different mediums. And they should not really be kind of overlapped so much. There are certain things you can do, like pass through cameras from VR headsets that can
Hmm.
enable mixed reality, and then there could be transitions between AR, VR. But the fundamental experience of immersing someone in a virtual experience is very, very, very different, very much more cinematic than
Hmm.
doing it in an AR experience. And I think you can go much deeper into each medium, or you can kind of converge them at some point. So it's a little bit up to what you're trying to do. So, you don't want to, I don't want to be too didactic about this is right or this is
Hmm.
wrong. Technology is very fluid, fundamentally very interchangeable and
Yeah.
hackable. If you read any of Jaron Lanier's books, the early VR experiments were actually social, and they were all about using technology for communication. Technology
Hmm.
was never meant to isolate people. A lot of good technology people adapt today based on communications with each other. So that kind of something we were really interested in.
So the theme of these episodes is transition. I guess kind of one of the big transitions that we're currently going through is just what is this online world that we're kind of like trapped, not trapped in, but like surrounded by now. I guess generally speaking first, like what's it been like since quarantine, since COVID for you?
It's been a trip,
Yeah.
it's been definitely something that I was not expecting. And a lot
Yeah.
of plans have changed for me, both personally and work-wise. I am in Europe right now, been traveling, and I can't go back to US because all the embassies are closed. So it's a little bit of like
Mm.
multiple things happen personally. But aside from that, we are a studio the size of 15 people right now, and everybody's working from all over. We had a nice small studio in Greenpoint in New York where everybody would come. It would be like a home. Now we don't have a home, and everybody is at home. So we are
Hmm.
like doing this distributed work style where everybody is trying to communicate through these online tools, which is much widely adopted. People come to
Yeah.
me and they're like, well, this is the work you do, so it must be like really good for your company. Versus like, I actually find it extremely difficult to do the work that we have to do by not being in person. On other
Yeah.
side, though, a lot of projects we were doing before where we tried to convince people to use certain technology has gained a lot of traction because there is a sense of confidence in these technologies we are using now that they actually can work. I was trying to convince people to do social VR experiences before. Now we're building two of them for different partners of the
Hmm.
studio because they now know it's a viable technology and they can use it and they can convince people to use it. And we are working with a certain set of art galleries in the world that were really hesitant to do AR, VR and distribution of artworks. And now we are
Hmm.
working with 57 galleries worldwide,
Wow.
which is like a
Uh-huh.
huge adoption of technology, in my opinion. Last year, we were considering maybe three, now
Hmm.
57. And it's been a really interesting ride to see how the market itself being affected by COVID is changing the adoption of technology, right? Art galleries are
Yeah.
closed, they need to reach their audiences. These are institutions that took 20 years to adapt using websites. They're not the most
Hmm.
progressive organizations. So there's been a shift in that sense that there's a lot more demand for the type of work we might be doing. There's more understanding of it, which is, I think, a
Hmm.
good thing. I mean, there's a lot of hate against Zoom, which is interesting to me. I think it's mostly emotional of what we are going through, being projected on this best friend you have on your computer now, and like you're just hating him. You can
Yeah.
hate him all you want, but you need him.
They could take it, yeah.
Yeah. uh,
I actually, yeah, I just did some research on Zoom and like for education and was finding that a lot of the educators that were frustrated with Zoom, because I asked them about their experience with Zoom and how they would fix it. And the ones that would try to fix it, their fixes were all trying to make Zoom more like the physical classroom. And it's kind of like that's why you're frustrated because it's not going to be the physical classroom. You need to
exactly.
use this tool for what this tool is, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I guess maybe on that end, yeah, what's it been like for you as an instructor in this transition? How have you had to adapt?
I was pretty worried at first because not just we're all away. I'm also in London teaching from
Hmm.
here, like pretty distant. So there's a time zone issue. I think the class itself, which is called Desert of the Real, Deep Dive into Social VR, is all
Hmm.
about networked experiences that are immersive, right? And I've been teaching this class for about 3 years now, and every year the curriculum is evolving. I almost
Hmm.
update the curriculum as the class moves, seeing how the students are doing, what technologies are coming up, and like revise it constantly. And I found it that I wish there was a technology. I wish every student had a VR headset so we could do the whole class in actually VR. That was the biggest
Hmm.
barrier to entry, that the students didn't have access to resources. Aside
Yeah.
from that, I think the class went well in terms of how we use Zoom. I don't think it
Hmm.
really bothered me. It was a little bit tiring because you're constantly trying to gauge the emotional and the mood of the room when you teach, right? Like it's never just like dumping information, it's always a back and forth. So, that like trying to understand, trying to communicate through Zoom, it's like you're always like this laser eye trying to see what's going on. Is the information being, are people understanding? Is the information being translated? So I hope we don't have to do this in Zoom again. And if it's going to be a remote education, I think we should transition into VR headset. I think we are ready to do so. I don't know if
That'd be great.
institutions are
Yeah.
ready. I don't know if institutions are ready, but I think the technology is ready.
You've built like quite the post ITP life. When I speak to people who, who've been through ITP and like, what they're doing now, I'm always thinking like, wow, I can't imagine what that transition is like. I guess circling back to transition, like, is there a point that you feel like you went from being ITP Igal to post ITP Igal, or like, what was the transition like out of ITP for you?
The transition out of ITP is, I think, is always a challenging one. And the challenge of it is the friction between the market and what you do at ITP, right? It's like any art school, I think, that you learn and engage in so many rich things, and then suddenly people are still doing websites, right? Like there's just like a reality check of like the world that we live in. It took me a few years to ground myself in that and like figure out what I wanted to do. And then I tried a bunch of things. I worked at different companies a little while and tried different things until I realized I'm not really suitable to really work anywhere, and I have to do my own thing. There's like a little bit of a realization of that. And it's never that easy. It's never like, oh, this happened and then the company started. There's a lot of work that goes into starting the studio and getting the business running, becoming a solo person for a long time, and then having your first hire and second hire and growing. And I always try to go back to the roots of what we are and try to remember that as we change, that we like to build things and we like to create things, and that is our core. We always tell people in the studio that, you're not just a producer, you have to also engage in UX. You have to also engage in prototyping. You have to engage in designing. Those are the things that the post ITP gal tries to remember, that, what made it very powerful for us, but also realizing that we need to have an income, we need to make money, and like figuring out the business and understanding what is viable and what to invest your time in. I think that is the most stressful part about post ITP, is choosing your battles, because there's a lot of options for ITP students. I walk into the floor. I mean, last year was the last time, unfortunately, but it always gives me a sense of anxiety of like, oh my God, there's so many things going on, and
all the time.
I didn't feel like that when I was ITP. It was very normalized. One of the reasons that I started teaching, because I appreciate it so much and I wanted to give back to the community at a certain level, because I find that the most powerful thing about ITP is the adjuncts who are in the industry actively working and bringing something back to the school itself.
All right, Igal, thank you so much for this. If people wanted to find out more about your work, where can they find it?
They can follow us on Instagram. Our tag is at Superbright _, or they can follow me on Twitter at IGALN, or they can just email me at igal@superbright.me, and I'll add them to our email list.
Adjacent.